What kind of country is Ukraine, really? For many people, the first image is war, a tired president in Kiev, cities under attack, refugees crossing borders. Or maybe you think of beautiful women, endless wheat fields, sunflower oil, rich minerals, Soviet factories, and the giant aircraft that once seemed impossible to build. But Ukraine is not just one of these things. Ukraine is the place where geography, resources, empire, and identity collide. And that is why this country has always attracted the world's attention. Look at the map. Ukraine sits in Eastern Europe, between the European Union and Russia, between the Black Sea and the Great Eurasian Steppe. It borders Poland, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, Moldova, Belarus, and Russia. To the south, it opens toward the Black Sea and the Sea of Azov. That location is not just a location. It is a pressure zone. Whoever controls Ukraine controls a gateway between Europe and the East, plus farmland, ports, rivers, industry, minerals, and strategic depth. This is why Ukraine is never just a country on Europe's edge. It is one of Europe's main crossroads. Ukraine covers about 603,700 square kilometers, making it the largest country entirely inside Europe. Its population is now around 38 million, far below the more than 50 million people it had after the Soviet Union collapsed. Behind that number is a deeper story: low birth rates, migration, aging, territorial loss, and war. Millions of Ukrainians have worked abroad in Poland, Germany, Czechia, and beyond. Since the full-scale war began in 2022, millions more have been displaced. So when we talk about Ukraine, we are not only talking about land. We are talking about a country whose people have been forced to move, adapt, and survive. Ukraine is often described through beauty, and yes, its cities and people have a very recognizable charm. Kiev, Lviv, Odessa, and Kharkiv all have their own character. Old churches, boulevards, theaters, and universities give Ukraine a strong cultural identity. But if we stop at beauty, we miss the real story. Ukraine's true power is underground and underfoot. First, the soil. Ukraine has some of the most fertile black earth on the planet. This black soil, known as Chernozem, is deep and naturally productive. It helped turn Ukraine into the breadbasket of Europe. That nickname is not poetic exaggeration. Ukraine is a major producer and exporter of wheat, corn, barley, sunflower seeds, and sunflower oil. Its grain feeds countries across Europe, the Middle East, North Africa, and Asia. That is why war in Ukraine can affect food prices far beyond Europe. A damaged Black Sea port can be felt in Egypt, Turkey, or a food importing country thousands of kilometers away. That is geography in action. A field in Ukraine can become a global economic issue. Then come the minerals. Ukraine is rich in iron ore, manganese, titanium, graphite, coal, clay, salt, and other resources. Kryvyi Rih is famous for iron ore. Donbass has long been associated with coal and heavy industry. Titanium and manganese also make Ukraine important to modern industry. In a world obsessed with supply chains, batteries, aerospace, defense, and critical minerals, Ukraine's underground wealth matters even more. This is why powerful countries watch Ukraine so closely. It is not just about borders, but resources. Ukraine's energy story is just as important. It has coal, natural gas, oil reserves, and one of Europe's largest nuclear power systems. Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. Before the war, nuclear energy supplied a large share of Ukraine's electricity. But once energy infrastructure becomes a battlefield, the meaning of geography changes again. Power plants, pipelines, substations, ports, and railways stop being just economic assets. They become targets. This is why the war has damaged not only buildings, but the entire structure that keeps a modern country alive. To understand Ukraine's strength, we also need its industrial past. During the Soviet period, Ukraine was not a remote agricultural province. It was one of the industrial cores of the entire Soviet Union. It had steel plants, machine-building factories, shipyards, aircraft design bureaus, tank factories, missile technology, and aerospace facilities. Some of the most iconic Soviet military and industrial projects were connected to Ukraine. Kharkiv became a center of engineering and education. Dnipro was tied to rockets and missiles. Mykolaiv was known for shipbuilding. Donbass became a symbol of coal and steel. And then there was the An-225 Mriya, the largest cargo aircraft ever built. Its name meant dream. It became a symbol of Ukrainian aviation engineering. When it was destroyed in 2022, it felt like the loss of industrial memory. After the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, Ukraine became independent. But independence did not instantly bring prosperity. The country inherited factories, mines, ports, nuclear infrastructure, and a highly educated population. But it also inherited a broken economic system. Old supply chains collapsed. Factories lost markets. Inflation, corruption, oligarchic power, and migration hit hard. For many Ukrainians, independence was freedom mixed with economic pain. Still, Ukraine did not disappear. It changed direction. In recent years, its IT sector has become one of the strongest in Eastern Europe. Ukraine developed a reputation for software engineers, outsourcing, cybersecurity, and digital services. Even during war, Ukrainian tech workers continued to work, build, code, and support the economy. That contrast matters. Ukraine is coal mines and cloud servers, wheat fields and software exports, Soviet inheritance and European ambition. Now look at its cities. Kyiv is the capital and the political, cultural, and symbolic heart of Ukraine. It sits on both sides of the Dnipro River, one of the great rivers of Europe. Kyiv is ancient, but not frozen in time. It has monasteries, golden domes, Soviet architecture, and modern offices. Its history goes back more than 1,000 years. In the Middle Ages, Kyiv was the center of Kievan Rus, a powerful state that shaped the history of Eastern Slavs. That is why Kyiv is not just a capital. It is a historical argument. For Ukrainians, it is proof that their identity is not new. It has deep roots. Kharkiv, in the northeast, is Ukraine's second major city and one of its great educational and industrial centers. Because it lies close to Russia, geography has made it especially vulnerable. It has universities, factories, and a long intellectual tradition. But in recent years, it has also become one of the cities most directly exposed to bombardment and destruction. Lviv, in western Ukraine, feels different. It has Central European architecture, old streets, churches, cafes, and a strong Ukrainian identity. Its old town is a UNESCO World Heritage Site. During the war, Lviv became a gateway to Europe and a logistical hub connecting Ukraine to Poland and the West. Odessa, on the Black Sea, is another world again. It is Ukraine's maritime face, with trade, music, theaters, and a complicated multicultural past. Odessa matters because ports matter. Through the Black Sea, Ukraine exports grain, steel, oilseeds, and more. When Odessa is threatened, Ukraine's economy feels it immediately. So the cities tell the same story as the map. Ukraine is not one simple place. It is a country of regions, east and west, steppe and forest, port and capital, farmland and factory. Its terrain explains a lot. Most of Ukraine is lowland or plain. This makes agriculture easier, but it also makes invasion easier. There are few natural barriers across much of the country. In the west, the Carpathian Mountains form a more rugged borderland. In the center, the Dnipro River cuts through the country from north to south. In the south, the land opens toward the Black Sea and the steppe. This flatness has always been both a gift and a curse. It gave Ukraine rich farming land. But it also made Ukraine a corridor for armies, traders, migrants, and empires. Ukraine's climate is mostly temperate continental. Winters can be cold, summers are warm, and rainfall changes by region. Forest steppe, and steppe create different landscapes. This mix produced different economies and identities inside Ukraine. The West looked toward Central Europe. The South looked toward the Black Sea. The East looked toward industry and Russia. The center held the political and historical core. That regional complexity is one reason Ukraine's modern politics has been so difficult. Now let's move through history quickly. Long before modern Ukraine existed, this land was home to steppe cultures, Greek colonies, Scythians, Sarmatians, Slavs, and many others. The steppe was never empty. It was a highway. In the 9th century, Kievan Rus rose around Kiev and became one of the most important states in medieval Europe. Then it fragmented. The Mongol invasion devastated Kiev in the 13th century. Later, large parts of today's Ukraine came under Lithuanian, Polish, Ottoman, Cossack, and Russian influence. This is why Ukraine's history is so layered. It was shaped by Orthodox Christianity, Catholic Europe, Cossack culture, Imperial Russia, Austria-Hungary, and the Soviet Union. In 1654, the Cossack leader Bohdan Khmelnytsky entered an agreement with the Tsardom of Russia. That moment later became one of the most disputed turning points in Ukrainian history. Was it protection? Was it alliance? Was it the beginning of domination? Different sides tell the story differently. That is why history matters here. In 1922, Ukraine became one of the founding republics of the Soviet Union. During the Soviet era, it was industrialized rapidly, but it also suffered enormously. The Holodomor famine of the early 1930s killed millions and remains one of the deepest wounds in Ukrainian memory. World War II added more devastation. After 1945, Soviet Ukraine became a major industrial, agricultural, military, and scientific center. In 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed, Ukraine voted for independence. It gave up the nuclear weapons left on its territory. It tried to build a new state between Russia and Europe, but that position was never easy. In 2014, Russia annexed Crimea, and war began in eastern Ukraine. In 2022, Russia launched a full-scale invasion. Since then, Ukraine has become a central question of world politics. How much territory can it defend? How much aid will the West provide? Can its economy survive? Can displaced people return? Can damaged cities be rebuilt? And can Ukraine turn tragedy into a stronger national identity? The cost is enormous. Recent international assessments estimate Ukraine's reconstruction needs over the next decade at nearly $588 billion. That number is almost impossible to imagine. It means rebuilding homes, roads, power plants, schools, hospitals, factories, ports, railways, farms, and lives. But Ukraine's future will not be decided only by money. It will be decided by geography, security, demographics, institutions, and whether people believe the country is worth staying for. So, what kind of country is Ukraine? It is not just a battlefield. It is not just a breadbasket. It is not just a former Soviet industrial base. It is not just a land of beautiful cities and painful history. Ukraine is a country whose geography made it valuable, whose resources made it strategic, whose history made it contested, and whose people are now trying to prove that their future belongs to them. One flat country in Eastern Europe has become a test for the world. A test of borders. A test of food security. A test of energy. A test of identity. And maybe most importantly, a test of whether a nation can survive when geography puts it in the path of history. So be honest. When you look at Ukraine now, do you see only a war? Or do you see why this country has mattered for more than 1,000 years? Leave your thoughts in the comments. And if you want to understand the world through geography, maps, and power, subscribe to Geo Logic. I'll see you in the next episode.
If you want to understand the logic behind the map, subscribe to Map Logic. See you in the next country.